Good morning, everyone. How are you doing? Welcome to this panel, which is all about igniting action through stories of orchestras, audiences, and careers. My name is Vanessa Reed. I'm the president and CEO of New Music USA, which is a national resource dedicated to the creation, performance, and appreciation of new music in all of its forms. And we do that by supporting individual music creators and organizations through grants and programs across the whole of the country. So if you don't yet know about our organization, please do find out more, go to our website. And also one of my colleagues, Kate, is here today, who has got a list for you to sign up to if you want to hear more about our funding opportunities. I am incredibly excited to be with our three very distinguished creative panelists today. And we're all going to be talking about stories of collaboration between orchestras and composers. And these collaborations are things that we want to happen because they bring about change in our community, change that impacts on programming, on audiences, on opportunities for composers of all backgrounds and musical styles. And this is inspired by a program that New Music USA has been running since 2019 with support from the Sphinx Organization. And it's called Amplifying Voices. And the idea of that program is to inspire orchestras to collaborate and co-commission composers whose voices we feel will be enriching repertoire of the future. So all three of the people on our panel today have been involved with that program. And some of the stories we share come from some of the relationships that were built through that Amplifying Voices initiative, which was also supported by Coleman Foundation and the Sorel Organization. So today is all about storytelling, so that's why we have three brilliant storytellers with us who have flown in from the Midwest, from Los Angeles and from New York to be here. First up, we have Latin Grammy-nominated composer and New Music USA board member Juan-Pablo Contreras. Let's hear it for our panelists.
Thank you.
Then we have composer, Grammy-nominated flutist, entrepreneur, educator, and Imani Winds founder Valerie Coleman.
Hi, everyone.
And last but not least, we have an extremely dynamic new music champion and music director of Fresno Philharmonic, Hotoda.
Hello.
Thank you so much for being here, all of you. So we're going to talk for about 40 minutes, and then there will be opportunities for you all to ask questions at the end. So please start thinking about what you would love to hear from one of our panelists today. But let's get going, I think, by before we hear from them, I just want a few hands in the air to see who we've got in the room with us. So who here today is a composer? Hands up. Excellent. Lots of composers. Brilliant. Who is working with an orchestra in some form or another? Great. So it's a perfect audience for this discussion. And anyone else who doesn't fit into either of those categories? So you're all not quite wanting to define yourself in one way, which is great, because that's how we should be. We're all fluid identities. But anyway, I hope what you hear today is going to be extremely useful to what you're doing in your work as composers and orchestras. So let's start, Juan-Pablo. What we really want to hear about is, what is the secret behind a fruitful collaboration with an orchestra from a composer's perspective? So tell us a story about some of your experiences, or any that you particularly want to highlight today.
Yeah, thank you again for joining us. I was very lucky to be a part of the first cohort of Amplifying Voices composers, and I was co-commissioned by the Las Vegas Philharmonic, California Symphony, Fresno Philharmonic, Tucson Symphony, Louisiana Philharmonic, and Richmond Symphony to write a piece. I was also very involved in the co-commission of getting the consortium of the orchestras. So good tip for composers, don't just let your managers and agents do this, but actually reach out yourself and try to make it happen. And one big thing was thinking about the communities that were going to perform this music and who were going to receive this music. This was 2 years ago, and I had just become an American citizen. Woo! It only took 15 years, very quick process. So I wanted to write something to celebrate my new Mexican-American identity and to celebrate the Mexican American communities of these orchestras. So I wrote a piece called Mexicano, like Mexican Chicano, becoming Chicano. And I was so pleasantly surprised about how this was received, especially the Fresno Philharmonic. When I was doing research, I learned that Fresno was one of the first towns to have what they called Mexican American orchestras, which are like these swing bands that would play Mexican songs but with American rhythms such as R&B, rock and roll. And that was one of the ways, by hosting Saturday night dances, that was one of the ways that Chicanos started to embrace their identity and feel Mexican Americans. So I wrote a piece about that, and in the audience we had people that actually had attended one of those original Saturday night dances. So that was an amazing way to connect with the audience. Also, the Tucson Symphony has done the piece in 4 different programs, so they really loved the piece. And I was surprised. Richmond, Virginia, huge Mexican American population, didn't know about them, that they came to the concert. So I think the success is storytelling and serving your audience, like thinking about who the musicians are, who the conductor is, and especially who the audience is that's gonna actually enjoy this music, and writing something that is relevant both for you but also for them.
And I remember you telling me that many of the people who turned up for your piece had never been to hear that orchestra before. Have you had any conversations with them about what's been happening since?
Not quite, but I remember that was in Las Vegas that there was Beethoven 9 in the program, which but it was a full house, but probably because of my piece. But yeah, we had a lot of people that came out with this. My first time coming to an orchestra, but because of the title, I was inclined to be here, and also because we did a lot of work. One thing that was great about, or is great about this program, is that it includes multiple visits before the premiere. So I went to Las Vegas 3 times before the actual premiere, did a lot of gambling. No kidding. But got to know the community, got to know the musicians also. That was a huge part of like writing for people and writing for the strengths of the players, and getting the opportunity to spread the word, no? Because sometimes we think, okay, we got the commission, my job is only to write the piece. But I think it's also very important to think about, okay, how can we make this a success collectively? How can we market this? How can we do some press and media? And I think all of that really helped to bring new audiences in, and hopefully audiences that can return and keep enjoying the orchestra.
Excellent. Are we going to hear a little clip of this music?
A different co-commission, because we have a video for that one. But
okay,
but
well,
yeah.
tell us. I want to bring some music into the conversation, because
Sure.
that's what we're all here for, really. So tell us about the co-commission that you've got a clip of.
So this was the most recent piece I completed, was another co-commission inspired by the business model and the way to connect with orchestras that Amplifying Voices really taught me. It was commissioned by Rocco in Houston as the lead, Fresno Philharmonic again, who else? Chicago Sinfoniera, Berkeley Symphony, and the Phoenix Symphony. And it's a piece called Alma Monarca, inspired by the Mexican Dia de los Muertos, Day of the Dead. My paternal grandfather was from Pátzcuaro, Michoacán, where this tradition started. So and when I was growing up, my family would visit his town to celebrate Dia de los Muertos, and that's what this piece is about. And it's a celebration of Dia de los Muertos in kind of an authentic way.
Excellent. Let's have a listen.
Thank you.
Excellent. And it's great to see Joanne Folletta in that video as well, because she's part of the Amplifying Voices program too, with Buffalo Philharmonic. Yeah, wonderful. Well, so that really showed us in a very powerful way the way you were telling stories and connecting with new audiences and transforming, you know, what was happening across that large number of orchestras you've been collaborating with. I want to move on to Valerie, because you're also an extremely important storyteller of our time. And I think when I think about your relationships with orchestras, I sort of always come, first of all, to that very long-standing kind of connection you seem to have had with Philadelphia Orchestra. So I wonder if you can tell us a bit more about that relationship and what that's brought for you.
Yeah, thank you so much. Philadelphia Orchestra has been a cornerstone in the development of my sound for orchestra. And it's by no accident that that happened. It was completely intentional on their part. They came to me several years ago when I was still very much touring with Imani Winds. And the programming director reached out and said, "Hey, I like this piece of yours. Do you think that it might work for orchestra?" And so at the time, I didn't really know if it could. I was kind of stuck into that world of what the piece already was and its identity. And so I said, maybe not that piece. How about this piece? And so they said, "We'll get back to you." And so, so 5 years passed, and they came back and they said, "Okay, why don't we give this a shot? And by the way, this is because we are very interested to see." In a way, I was kind of that lab rat experiment. We wanted to see if by putting a composer into an environment of an ongoing relationship with an orchestra, how your work would evolve, and how your language would evolve at that. And so I wrote it. They said, "Let's start off with a 5-minute piece." And so I wrote an arrangement for Umoja, and then that went well. It was received well. And they said, "Okay, well, let's see what you do with the next piece," and so on and so on. And that is unusual, highly unusual. They were in little portions and segments that were assigned to me, basically. And during that time, I really got a chance to listen to what the Philadelphia Orchestra sounds like: the robust strings, the virtuoso brass and winds, the percussion that's on point. So yeah, that was a really good thing. I'm about 6 commissions in with them. And this most recent one is actually a departure thanks to Amplifying Voices, and also thanks to the Philadelphia Orchestra's willingness to really take on a large-scale work. So it was a concerto for orchestra based on the Renaissance, the Harlem Renaissance, but rather even more expansive than that, the Great Migration, the decades upon which African Americans moved across the United States to create better lives for themselves. And so using different paintings and poetry stemming from mainly the Harlem Renaissance, also looking at Chicago, different other places, I started to really work with developing something that let the players of the orchestra shine. And so that's through the Amplifying Voices program, which I was thrilled to do. The outreach on that is ongoing. So pre-concert talks and things, and the other orchestras that are involved, the Louisville Orchestra Atlanta Symphony, New World Symphony as well. And so it's the programming, the premieres are ongoing into 2026.
So if you get a chance to see Valerie's Concerto for Orchestra, it's a phenomenal piece. So I really highly recommend you try and see the next performance. And I got to see it in a few different places, including Carnegie Hall, which felt very fitting because it was at the same time that the Met was hosting the Harlem Renaissance exhibition. So it kind of felt very, on time and kind of meaningful in that context. But I was even more kind of moved when I saw it performed at your hometown in Louisville. So I wonder if you can tell us a bit more about, the significance of that for you and why that orchestra was part of the consortium and, what you were able to do there on the ground as well.
Absolutely. Well, I grew up watching the orchestra. My very first teacher, flute teacher, was in high school, and she was the principal flutist, still is. So it was very much a homecoming in that way to hear her play and to, connect with the musicians of the orchestra, most of whom I'd known from back in the day, really. But even more so, there is a connection to Muhammad Ali in this way. Muhammad Ali grew up not far from where my home is in Louisville. And so it was a real opportunity to just visit the Ali Center, visit his home house, and basically connect with my community in the west end of Louisville, which represents one of the poorest zip codes in the country. So that was a really special moment, but I think it was also about connecting in an educational setting as well, connecting with the high schools that have a forte in performing arts, and also just working with different programs there while I was there. So it was a real, true, meaningful experience. In a way, I'm call myself a New Yorker because I've been living there for I don't know how many decades now. I'm not going to age myself. But Louisville will always be my home. But Louisville, like any city that you haven't been to in a while, changes. Storefronts change. The art scene changes. People come in that have new artistic voices that elevate the community and elevate all the programs that are provided within educational and also entertainment ways. So yeah, to get to know people all over again at the same time, that was really a special treat.
Well, there was definitely a lot of support for Valerie from the audience. They were very proud of you. And I got to see you in a discussion as well, which was demonstrating how in Louisville they've really built bridges between the different music genres in the city, partly thanks to Teddy Abrams, the conductor, who actually has been living there for 10 years. So the community impact of the orchestra there just feels incredibly powerful. I don't know how that experience was. You had Bonnie Prince, Billy on the panel, and all kinds of different artistic perspectives.
Yeah, Teddy Abrams is someone that really knows how to bring people together. And so I really saw that firsthand from how he walked on the stage and literally gave the orchestra to the audience, calling it your Louisville Orchestra. Participating in events around the area that may or may not have anything to do with the orchestra, but he made it his business to bring the orchestra in as a partner. And this particular thing you're talking about was the Festival of Faiths, and that is kind of a convention where different churches, different pastors, all different faiths come together to celebrate together. And so Teddy basically said music is a faith in and of itself, and we're going to bring to the stage some things to help you connect to your inner spirit. And so I think that he's really a clever, brilliant, genius person that really knows how to reach out and connect people through the common threads that they may have.
I think this is a great segue to another fantastic leader from the world of music directors and conductors. So Ray, you've probably heard about Teddy's work in Louisville, and I know that everyone in our community is very much aware of how much you've been doing with living composers in your programming. So let's hear about what you're doing with Fresno Philharmonic.
Thank you, Vanessa. First of all, I just want to say this is my first time here at the Sphinx conference, and any conference that starts with a dance party and
Woo!
this wonderful duo, which that happened last night, it was just so special. So I'm just so thrilled to be here. I am a huge fan of both of these composers, so to be on a panel, to talk to them, and to share ideas is just such an honor. So I am the music director of the Fresno Philharmonic. This kind of showcases our season this year. As you can tell, diversity is powerful. And I think that everyone should have a seat at the table. And these are the composers that we have commissioned and worked with, and Valerie and Juan-Pablo, of course, are on this list. And this is a passion that we are driven to do in Fresno because it is the right thing to do, and we have this incredible platform. Why not? And before my tenure, I've been there 8 years. Before my tenure, it was very much an Eastern European focus with the last music director presented 2 living composers in his 12 years there. So I am just thrilled that we have in Fresno now normalized programming living composers, because not only is it normalizing, but it's also reflecting our community. In Fresno is a very agricultural, and lots of immigrants are living there. Over 40 languages are spoken, is what I learned in my first week as a music director there. That is important to me, to have our orchestra represent our community. And so this next month, in February 15th and 16th, we are embarking an incredible initiative called the Cultural Crossroads. And we are representing not only the Japanese American community in the stories of the valley, a Japanese American peach farmer who is also a writer. And we identified these wonderful Japanese American composers, 2 sisters. Talk about collaborating together. Imagine being sisters and collaborating on a piece together. And we're just presenting this incredible community-driven commission in February. And the next Cultural Crossroads will feature Juan-Pablo Contreras in the piece Alma Menorca, which I'm very excited about. So this is something that I think is just so exciting to me as a music director, and to bring this music to not only our audiences, but our musicians, and really bringing the board and everyone, to get excited about it, And I think not only is it important to push the envelope of orchestral music forward, right? We love the Strauss and the Beethoven and the Brahms, of course, but let's find the next Strauss, the Beethoven, and Brahms in our century. So it's just a very exciting time in Fresno, and I'm just excited that we're all on board with it.
I just want to thank Ray. Thank you for setting such a great example.
And if I can throw a flower at Ray right now, she does an amazing job also making composers a part of the community and inviting them multiple times. So not just one premiere, but actually, okay, we're going to commission something. Let's first perform something by you so the community gets to know you. Come back again, do the premiere. Let me bring you back again. So it becomes a relationship with the community, with the musicians, obviously with Conductor.
And it's name recognition,
Yeah.
Once they've heard your music, they see it again. Oh, now we're doing this very special Cultural Crossroads initiative with you. So it is relationship building. It's so important.
So last night, for those of you who were there, Jessie Montgomery mentioned in her interview that she thought relationship building between music directors and composers is something that needs its own curriculum in education. So Ray, what would be your advice on how to make that relationship successful and fruitful and two-way and mutually beneficial?
I think it's really important to do your homework as a composer. Like Juan-Pablo was saying, how does this piece really affect your community in a very special way? When you do that homework, I'm instantly listening. Oh, okay, that's something that I can present to my musicians, to my board, that there's this thread that's happening. You know, there's a story that really relates to our community. I think that's so important. And sometimes, you know, the idea might be 3 or 7 years away, you know, but just to present that, I think is a really good way.
And is there any advice you would give to other music directors on what approach they need to have?
I think we need to break down these silos. Really, the silo, like, here's a music director, you don't talk to that person until, you know, the first rehearsal. I mean, you know, I think that the more I know about the composer and are friends with the composer, we go out for a drink or lunch, get to know them a little bit better, it really helps me conduct the piece better. And so I think, again, this relationship building, this friendship that happens, we all win. We all win. So I think those silos really need to start being broken down.
Anything else from Juan-Pablo or Valerie on the relationships you've had with music directors?
Well, from a compositional standpoint, I completely agree 100%. Really taking a look at the audiences, at the programming that has been previously done, and then starting to think also outside of the box in a way that is informed by that completely. I always say that it's always good to have at least 5 ideas to pitch to an artistic programmer, and then just have that discussion, reach out to that person, and be ready to talk about how that's going to reach the community, and be ready to talk about what all entails in those projects. So yeah, having that pitch ready.
Thank you. Sorry, I was just tuning in to a radio broadcast that's joining in. But yeah, so let's switch gears a bit, because what we're also talking about here is transforming the repertoire, you know, for the future. So, and Ray, you touched on that already. And so how many orchestral pieces have you each written so far, Juan-Pablo and Valerie, approximately?
Let's say 10 good ones. Yeah.
So don't look at the bad ones, 10 good ones. And Valerie?
It's in that ballpark, but good ones, I don't know. Maybe I would go with the smaller number.
That would
Always
just be
trying to improve.
That would be your inner critic, I think. So the question is really going to be, you know, are all of those pieces being performed as much as they might be? You know, so what happens if an orchestra has not commissioned a piece and had the glory of the premiere? You know, how do we encourage orchestras to actually look at the existing repertoire you have and make sure it gets performed, you know, in different places across the country to different audiences?
I think the secret, and help us out here, we need good video recordings of our pieces. And I know for orchestras it's difficult, but if you don't have it, it's like the Cinderella story. As midnight strikes, it's forgotten. So for me, I had a piece called Mariachitlan that I wrote in 2016. Yeah. Now, and what happened is the Jalisco Philharmonic, my hometown orchestra, did a tour in California and happened to play at USC, where I was getting my doctorate and now teach. And we did a video recording of that performance, and it was very good, very well recorded. With that, to this day, I've gotten 120 performances of that piece. It got me a record deal with Universal Music. It changed my career. It got me my first Latin Grammy nomination. And a lot of it had to do with, I had a video to showcase and to pitch to conductors, and not just send them a score, but actually have them, like, this is how the orchestra looks and feels when they play this piece, and this is how the audience reacts to it as well. So I think we gotta change this. We gotta make an effort to have recordings, not just archival and private, but like something you can just put on YouTube. Everyone wins. I don't know what we're doing. Let's do it. Let's make it happen. Yeah.
And interestingly, Carlos Simon, who's also here at the conference, he shared almost exactly the same story. It was kind of around the pandemic, so it was a time when the piece was only performed online, I think, and because of that, it was left on YouTube, and from that, that's when everything started to snowball, and he just got lots and lots of opportunities. So, Ray, I mean, what's your take on this idea?
Yes, I think it's important to not just do a premiere, but to have works that are in the repertoire. I mean, it's not just for the composers and conductors, it's for the musicians. You know, these players need to know umoja, how to play mariachlin, you know, and enjoy it themselves. I think it should just be like Ruslana Ludmila overture, you know, like the orchestra can just do it and play it. And we have such great musicians in orchestras today, regional orchestras, you know, even smaller orchestras that are phenomenal musicians. So just getting it in the repertoire and I think is key. And again, like having open-minded conductors like Teddy and you know, willing to challenge our audiences, educate them, but then educate is not quite the right word. It's like sharing. This is a story to share, you know, and if you present it that way, the audiences are going to eat it up. They're going to be like, oh, that's me up there, you know, especially, you know, having composers come on stage and introduce the piece means so much to people in my audience in Fresno. And they're like, oh, there's Vivian Fung. She's an Asian American composer, you know, like that's just things that really connect to the community. That's so important.
And on the subject of collaboration, I mean, both you, Ray, and Juan-Pablo and Valerie, with all of these kind of networks of co-commissioners, are you kind of working with like-minded music directors in that context? And are they the sort of people that you can influence to put on pieces that you've discovered and is already existing, but that they may not necessarily be, you know, that wouldn't be at the top of their list otherwise?
Absolutely. And I'm part of the Taki Alsop Fellowship with Marin Alsop, and she's such a champion, of course, of new music. And she has this wonderful festival at Ravinia called Breaking Barriers. And we collectively share program ideas, you know, just things that we would probably not want to share, you know, with each other. It's a fellowship of women conductors. And it's just you know, finding those networks that you feel safe in and can share ideas and, you know, just seek those out. I think it's important.
So before we start moving on to questions, I think we should have a moment where we also talk about the bad experiences that you may have had. So you don't have to name any names here. It's being broadcast on YouTube too. So, but or you can name names if you'd like to. But are there any examples that you want to share that you've learned from where things have gone really badly, or there's just been an example of how it shouldn't be between an orchestra and a composer, or a music director and a composer? You're competing for who goes first.
I'll flip it into something positive, but I had an experience where I had a premiere with an orchestra and they didn't have a seat for me because it was a sold out concert. And, oh, we forgot your seat. So it's gonna be in the fourth balcony. And I was like, but I have to introduce my piece from stage, so how can I get to the fourth balcony to hear it and then come back? And oh yeah, we didn't think about that. So learning experience, put everything in your contract, having a good seat that is easy accessible to the audience, taking a bow from the from the stage. We want composers, it takes me a year to write a good piece. I want to take a bow from the stage, no? And so let's get rid of this tradition of just pointing at the composer. No, come on. Like composers, we want to be a part of the orchestra, and so help us get there. So yeah, putting everything, like even the silly things like this, like can you get me two good tickets that are easy accessible to the stage? Put everything in writing so that you have a good experience. But yeah, you wouldn't think this was possible in the 21st century, but yeah.
So get those things in your contract. That's good advice. Valerie?
I was about to say the same thing. So the hall that the piece was being premiered in has a backstage. It's a very famous hall, and to get backstage, you have to go down several flights of stairs. And so they put me in a place where I had to not only go through the row of seats, but then try to get down the stairs and then back up to the stage. And so that's one thing, but the conductor did not know I was coming up as well. And so I finally make it. The applause is still going on, and the conductor walks off while the executive director is behind me, and he says, "Go, go, go!" And he pushes me onto the stage only a little bit, and then the applause stops because it had been going on for a while. And so I just had to kind of nonchalantly just turn back around. So
It's just
yeah.
those really important details that then kind
Those
of
little
ruin that
things.
special moment. Yeah. No, well, it's so interesting that that's quite a similar experience.
I'm taking notes. I think one of the things that is not in the classical world wheelhouse for us, maybe performers, because I'm a pianist as well, and is that when you learn something, that's it. That's how it goes. And when you're working with a composer, and he's still working with probably a singer or something, and he decides to change it at the rehearsals, your mind is like, no, I'm conducting it like this. So, you want to be safe and do a good job, but you have to also be flexible and work with the composer and the artist and to really it's a living, breathing organism, and for me to think that way is always challenging, but it I think it makes for a better performance. And so, for conductors out there and composers, just to be gentle in the way that you approach that process.
That's good advice. Before we go to questions, is there any other kind of gem of wisdom or piece of advice that you'd like to give our audience that's full of composers and conductors and orchestra reps?
Allow yourself plenty of time to compose the work. Really, it's kind of basic, but when an orchestra comes to you or any commissioning body and says, and they offer this commission with an unrealistic amount of time to actually complete the work, try to avoid having the what do you call it? It's a starvation mentality, or rather, I don't want to offend anybody, but know to say no. I've learned this the hard way, and I had this conversation with Joan Tower, and she just looked at me and said, "Why are you going to do that to yourself? Just say no." And it's very, very true. Either say no or really strongly negotiate the time that you need.
I'll piggyback on that. Yeah, I think the secret of the business for composers is getting multiple performances, not just the commission and the premiere, but if you can install that piece a little bit on the repertoire, that's where you actually start to make a living off of that. So give yourself plenty of time to make sure that you're writing the best piece possible that can actually survive the premiere. It's not about getting a lot of commissions. It's about writing good pieces that can then be played and played again while you're enjoying in the beach. And the other thing I will say is make sure that you, as a composer, are as much in touch and involved with everything in the orchestra, the conductor, administrator, musicians, and don't let your manager or agent do that job. Like, the more you can be involved in, okay, how can we make this happen? Marketing people, how can I meet the donors? How can I make sure this is gonna be successful? And it's part of our jobs as composers. Not just writing the piece is a very small part of what it takes to make a collaboration successful and a career. So get used to doing all of that work, and also kind of identify what are you good at. Are you good at doing community outreach and going to schools? Put that in your pitch. Okay, I want to write a piece and I can also do this. Or I'm good at talking with donors. You send me with a donor and I will pitch this piece to them. So take a look at what your strengths are and incorporate those into your toolkit, or what yesterday we were talking about the toolbox. What is your toolbox that goes beyond just writing good music, and put that into your agreements and your pitch as well.
And I want to add to what Juan-Pablo does all the time. Well, not, I don't know if it's all the time, but for this piece, Alma Menorca, he has two different instrumentations for the piece. And so he has the triple wind version, but he also has a double wind, smaller instrumentation. Having two versions of something, I know it's not ideal, but it really helps with programming because if you're an artistic administrator and you have certain services you need to fill, or you have filled all those services and you really need to work with a Beethoven-sized orchestra, having that option really will help me sell it. Like, oh, well, this has a different instrumentation. Can we still do this? And I think that's really helpful.
Fantastic, really useful practical advice. And now we have time for some questions from you. And there is a very helpful person with a microphone. Thank you.
We also have a virtual option. So if you go into your schedule and click on our session, you should see a little option that says ask a question. So you can type those in and they'll show up here. Or you can just raise your hand.
Hi, this is Curtis Stewart. I'm putting my ACO, American Composers Orchestra hat on. First of all, thank you for everything. You all live the best. Just real quick about the video thing. ACO ends up recording and videotaping every one of our Carnegie Hall performances so that the composers can use it in that way. And it really depends on the administrator's passion for looking at the structure and relationship between the orchestra, the composer, and the willingness to actually make that happen. It's you have to really look at your structure to see what's possible, and it takes willingness. And sometimes people think of it as an impossibility before they start having the conversation. So I just wanted to amplify what you just said. So this is kind of this is something that I'm dealing with as an artistic director and as a creator. It's like very difficult for me, especially given it's 2025 and given birthright citizenship is on the table for being removed. And so as artistic directors and creators, sharing stories that identify both yourself and potentially vulnerable demographics of our society. What is our responsibility to protect and advocate for those communities while lifting them up? So we're not just offering them as sacrifice.
That's a tough one. I think it needs to, if it happens in a genuine way, in a natural way, like find a way to genuinely address those issues, or in a way that is genuine to your orchestra, your musicians, your composers, and audiences will really appreciate that. Like, don't try to slap that onto a program to see how you can make it work, but actually like look for, okay, I believe really passionately in this, how can I find a program that really addresses it in a very genuine way, without trying to give you the truth, like establish your truth, but just in a way that poses these questions and does it in a natural way. And I can't avoid making a commercial because I'm writing a piece about that right now. Yeah, thank you for that question. I'm writing my first symphony, so this summer will be I will have lived half of my life in Mexico and half in the States. So I'm writing my first symphony, 25-minute symphony that is about my journey as an immigrant coming to this country, and a celebration of that, and which is very important to talk about that in I think in a positive way. And there's already a few orchestras, Pasadena Symphony, Fresno Youth Orchestra, Victoria Bach Festival in Texas, that have joined. So if you're interested in the audience, let's talk. Yeah.
And Curtis, just from New Music USA's perspective on your question, I think there are two things in my mind since I've been at this conference. So one, just recently Ray was saying it's about normalization. So it's about this genuine relationship with living composers of all backgrounds, and it's just normal for them to be in the program. And then the second thing is thinking about what Jessie Montgomery said yesterday, which is she can spot when someone is asking her to write a piece and it's not authentic and it's not genuine, and it's kind of about ticking boxes or whatever. So I think if you've got that authenticity and a really genuine interest in what that individual human being is bringing musically, then it's a much more safe environment. And that's what we were looking for when we were selecting the consortia for the Amplifying Voices program. It was about authentic, genuine collaborations that have been carefully thought through. any more questions? I saw some hands. Oh,
Hi, my name is Catherine Elizabeth, and I'm a composer at the Cartography Project at the Kennedy Center. And thank you so much for this panel. I'm learning a lot. I'm wondering, how do I take action as a composer that's new to this space? I'm a producer and songwriter, so I'm rather new in these past few years to composing using notation. Okay, I'm an electronic musician, so how do I take action to get more opportunities, more commissions, and to have more opportunities to have my music performed, being that I'm rather new to this space and that I've also been kind of marginalized as a vocalist from kind of this space, being that I don't play like an instrument.
Well, can I jump in on this? So this cultural crossroads that we're doing in Fresno, we're presenting these Japanese American composers in February. They are jazz musicians. And again, like breaking down those silos, they've written maybe one orchestral piece. And what we did was we built in 3 orchestral readings so that these composers who are top of their field in the jazz world, saxophonist and a pianist and flutist, now is writing for orchestra. And you know, and Gabrielina Frank, they're alumni of the Creative Academy there, and she is part of this commission. And she's like, it's really important for these women to work with your orchestra. And so can you build in these 3 orchestral readings? And we're like, absolutely. It's good for us because they're going to write a better piece. And so this kind of idea of like, let's break down these barriers, you know, identifying somebody who can really speak to your needs, you know, and working within that.
did that answer your question?
Yes, it did. I also like to say that I'm open to commissions, as I'm sure many composers are, but while I have the microphone, it's hot. Also, I'm sure Levi is. He's also a part of the Cartography Project. I have to put on for my people. We're part of this is the first cohort of this, and it highlights Black composers throughout the country. So I will come up and speak to you all as well. But I think also if either one of you have anything to say about what we can do as composers to take action, to find other commissions, and to have performances and have our music licensed in like institutions that would play it as well, would be helpful. Thank you.
I would say that it's very important to build relationships with collaborators, people who will become ambassadors for your voice. Also looking for within those collaborators, those who specialize in engravement, notation, and have a really good grasp of adding that to the table of what you need. And having this group, this core of ambassadors in your corner, your people, your tribe, you know, your squad, then you can really start to just look towards also expanding the type of repertoire that you put out, type meaning the configuration of instruments, and starting to ask the question of instrumentalists, in particular within the chamber music setting, what kind of configurations are needed right now? What is there, you know, is there something that groups want to program but they don't have the repertoire for? And seeing if there's an alignment with what you envision the sounds that you want to bring to the table. And then from there, you build those relationships. I think it's really about communicating and establishing trust with instrumentalists, both in the academic setting and also within the chamber music world, and, excuse me, and through extension, the orchestral world as well.
Great.
Hi, my name is Liam Cunningham. I'm the string ensembles director with the Baltimore Symphony Orchestra's Orchids program. And I'm so inspired by all 4 of you up here today, so thank you for being here. Ray, in particular, you had mentioned like helping to find the next generation that will be our Strausses, Beethovens, Florence Prices. This is all just a preface to say, I think that our students will be those people. And that being said, music for youth orchestra is terrible. And so I wondered what you think the role of modern contemporary composers is for youth orchestras, and how we can give these students artistically quality pieces to work on without kind of sacrificing anything for the leveling.
I think I have a good answer. Okay. What's amazing with youth orchestras, and I also see this a lot in wind ensembles, they are the best at creating community, like even better than professional orchestras. So it's very easy to, or easier to create like a very low budget co-commission fee, like $500, $200, and then get 20 youth orchestra that can join that and create a substantial fee for a composer, and build in some collaboration in terms of, okay, going to the community, making something big with combined efforts. And I think that's a really incredible strength that I've seen in educational youth orchestras, wind ensembles, that they do much better than a lot of orchestras are still in the mentality of not sharing the love. Yeah, so use that to your advantage. You identify a composer that you think would be good to work with your community, with your demographic, with your students, and reach out, and then make it happen. And for composers, there's no better thing than actually working with a lot of different kinds of people that are actually interested in what you're doing, and especially with young musicians, and seeing how for the first time, I worked with the National Youth Orchestra, and a lot of musicians said, like, I had never seen a Mexican composer in my life, and then, like, this is life-changing, taking pictures with me as if I were a celebrity, which I'm not. That's amazing. It really changes your everything, just to see someone like you doing something, and the representation really matters. So yeah, that you have a huge opportunity there.
And as a quick plug for a piece that was commissioned through Amplifying Voices, Nina Shekar wrote a piece for Yola, which was also played by other youth orchestras. So if you want information about that, we can give that to you. Next question.
Hello, my name is Michael Dudley. I'm a composer.
Dr. Dudley.
Nice to see you. Nice to see you, Vanessa, as well.
You too.
So I have a question, a bit of a two-pronged question. I am forging and cultivating relations with various people across the field. I feel very fortunate to I don't have management or an agent or anything, but I would say I have representation thanks to opportunities provided by amazing organizations like the ACO. So thank you so much, Curtis. I owe you a lot. Even with that, I'm reaching a stage in, I suppose, my life where I'm like starting to age out of young composer competitions and stuff like that. And I'm frankly a little bit concerned that like any momentum that I have garnered as a result of any kinds of recognition for being like a young composer has kind of stalled. And I don't really know where to go from here, because hopefully I have the rest of my life to figure it out, right? And then the other part of it, I guess, goes back to the very important concept of, I'll use the corporate term of deliverables. So as somebody I'm a jazz musician, I didn't formally study classical composition or anything like that, but I've composed for orchestra, string orchestra, etc. I haven't really had any, I have had like maybe 2 video recordings of my piece, but because I haven't studied in institutions composition, I haven't had access in the same way that many of my peers and or mentors have had for orchestra readings and things like that. I don't have the privilege of, I actually do spend summers out in Aspen, but I'm working. So I can't, apply to be a part of the music festival. So I don't know if you all have any suggestions for, you could pick whatever angle you want to answer.
Dr. Dudley, it's so good to see you. I am really excited about the works that you have have brought through Sphinx. I remember the Carnegie Hall performance of that and all the rave reviews. So first and foremost, I'm just giving a shout out to you and your prowess as a conductor, your vision. And second, speaking of vision, when we come to a point, and I've experienced this myself as, I'm getting along over the years. When that happens, I always look towards the artistic side of things. And in that area, I have always a renewable hope, because I know that it's in vision that we're able to innovate, we're able to curate, and we're able to connect. And so in speaking to all of those things, it's always good to have maybe just a list of ideas, a list of visions, projects. Because when you have projects that are strong, they can carry themselves when you put that energy out there and speak on them. If you don't get support from an orchestra right away, perhaps this is a project that can be in a smaller scale, to be formed with a grant, to have video footage created around it, really bolstering the project itself, allowing it to manifest into something that is more tangible for orchestras to see and consider.
And just to piggyback on what Valerie, that was beautiful. But I think you need to dream big. You just have to be really tenacious about your dreams and your hopes and aspirations, and hold on to them.
And I'll add what nobody wants to hear, but make it happen yourself. I think we're a part of a generation, maybe our teachers just told us, as long as you're a good composer, you're good to go. And then you go into the real world, and that's a very small part of what you need, right, to have a career. So get used to fundraising, get used to making your own projects happen, get used to getting musicians in the room together to record something. And for instance, if you want to become an orchestral composer, and then orchestras will jump in your train and want to work with you, but it doesn't happen the other way around. Like, I started getting good commissions when I was in my 30s. What did I do between my 20s and 30s? I was still writing orchestra music and that was my focus, and I tried to make it happen myself. So it's really tough, and we wish it was the other way around, but yeah, get used to being a warrior. Composing is, life or death here. Yeah. yeah.
This is a very dramatic way to end our panel discussion. We're going to end, I think, is there one final question that we want to take? Okay. One final question from Carolina, I think.
Hello? Okay. Here you go.
Thank you. Carolina Heredia. I'm a composer and director of programs for American Composers Forum. I have a question for the composers. I'm so pleased to have so many sessions and wonderful, you telling us your experiences and advice for thoughtfully commissioning. How can composers support each other to improve the precariousness of the profession, especially for those that are not in the mainstream? Is unionizing necessary? And I know that unions may be a bad word for some administrators, but is there another way of us coming together and working on having that agency and power in those spaces where decisions are taken, like, for instance, the recording rights for composers? Like, how can we do to take that agency and not depend on organizations or others to advocate for us?
Great question for the composers.
First and foremost, there's power in the collective. And secondarily, there's power in networks as well. Within a collective, finding composers that are of like mind, that you can pool your resources together. Inherently, composers automatically have a community, whether we want to or not, because it is up to us that we go to each other's concerts. We learn our craft by listening, and we learn our craft by hearing different sounds that we may not have considered before. So in that, a collective is something that can pull its artistic talents, its financial resources, all of those things. A community is something that takes a little more work to put together. In finding those common threads with composers who are like mine, and having those discussions about what needs to happen, sharing concert dates with one another, so that we can all show up. And, you know, if there is someone that has the ability to have the ear of an artistic planner programmer mentioning composers within the scope of what might be interesting to them, or if you get a commission that you find that you cannot do, submit a list to that person of composers that you feel will knock it out of the park. So, you know, being a neighbor, being a part of a community, and allowing the connection of artistry.
We're at time, but if you have a quick thing you want to share.
I think it's about the community and doing the things that we need to do as composers to help everyone. For instance, you know, getting used to speaking on a stage. You know, a lot of composers like, I don't want to share my. Come on, help the community. You know, help being on social media. We don't want to do it. Come on, let's put our face out there, our story, our message. So I think being good colleagues and helping everyone, you know, come to this realization that living composers are so necessary to keep this going. And I think it starts with us to believing it ourselves and to showing up and doing the work to inspire others to say, this is inevitable. We need more living composers.
Thank you so much for your thoughtful questions, everyone. Thank you to our amazing panelists, Ray, Valerie, and Juan-Pablo. And just one quick last thing. Ray, if you can just move the slide right to the end. We put together a few links for you, which include some of our friends' resources at American Composers Forum and also at ACO. So this is just some links where you can find out more about co-commissioning, repertoire that's out there, database from the Composer Diversity Institute. So if you want to take a photo of that, that might be useful. Thank you again, and see you around at some of the other sessions at this conference.
Yes. Thanks, everybody. Also, if you're interested in learning more about New Music USA's grant opportunities, we have some sign-up sheets for our email list here at this table. So come say hello. Thanks so much.